Hi there. I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of the Oops Facts, I have Jeff Myers. Welcome to the show, Jeff.
Hey everyone, how's it going?
It's good. It's good. Now, we've known each other for a while through interesting circumstances when we first met, of course, but we won't delve into that too much. But I know that you are a man of many, many hobbies. You enjoy spending time with your kids, you enjoy woodworking,
Yeah,
but I also know that you love to cook, right?
I do. Yep. I love to eat, so
How?
you got to cook.
That's true. Well, yes, yes. How did you get a bit of there's cooking, people can make an egg, and then there's serious cooking. I've seen some pictures of stuff you've done.
Mm,
How did you get into cooking to begin with?
mm. My mother used to make a dish, and it was chicken, broccoli, and cheese, and that's
Okay.
that's all it was. No seasoning, nothing. It was great when I was a kid, but I wanted to do more, right? So my favorite thing now I think is making beef bouillon or I love Thai food, so I've been trying to
Okay.
cook that. I can't get to it, get to the restaurant level, but that's what I like to do.
Do I sense maybe a small yearning to open a restaurant one day, be a chef?
We'll see. Once I retire, we'll see.
So, what would you say has been your most complicated dish that you've attempted to make to date?
Well, I wouldn't say most complicated, but I think Thanksgiving I always is always at my house, and
Okay.
and timing everything is usually the hardest part, right? Because you want to have everything come out at the same time. So that's probably the most complicated dishes, I guess, that I've put together.
Okay. And what's the secret in your mind to the perfect turkey?
So I follow Alton Brown's recipe. You got to brine it for about 24 hours and
Okay.
and slow cook it. You know, just follow the
So
recipe.
so you're not getting um like a barrel full of oil or something and then and like deep frying it
No,
or something.
no, you're cheating.
I've seen some interesting videos over time around people with
Yeah.
doing different things with turkeys and different ways to cook them. So definitely slow cooking. Slow cooking is very good. Anything else you like to slow cook?
I do have a smoker. I do a pretty good do a pretty good pork butt. Do some ribs.
Nice.
Not all the time, but they turn out pretty well.
I have a smoker as well, as I'm sure you're aware of, and
Oh
indeed
yeah,
do love doing things like ribs and brisket. Low and
I, I've
slow,
I've
low and
I've seen
slow.
some pictures.
It's a mutual interest. It's quite fun. A lot of patience, but quite fun. Um, so going from food. By the way, actually, before we move on, right? You said your mother, growing up, made this basic dish. Did she teach you any further cooking, or she just cooked very simply and you went on your own?
It was more my father that taught me
Ah,
how to cook. He made a shrimp and sausage pasta, and it was
okay.
like his thing. And it was more complex than anything my mother made. And she was a great cook. Don't get me wrong. Otherwise, she'll stab me. But he was the one who was a little more creative, I guess.
Okay, that's interesting. So it runs in the family. What about your children? Are you teaching them how to cook?
Yes, yeah. So my daughter is very interested. She loves to cook. My son just wants to eat.
My one likes eating as well. He cleans up occasionally, but he much prefers the eating,
Yeah,
the
yeah,
joys of
yeah.
children.
No.
So, moving on from cooking to the oops factor, what story do you have to share with us today and what lessons from it?
Yeah, so I've come across a kind of a unique scenario where I got asked. It's actually an internal for my company
Okay.
use case to to provide a way to do staffing requests, right? So we work through opportunities every day, right, within Dynamics for
Yeah.
sales. But how do we actually forecast? How do we actually look at what's coming up, right? How do we give that to our talent management team so that when we land these opportunities, they can be staffed? And that was really the question that we had to answer, and the technology comes into that.
Interesting scenario. I heard a recent one, something similar recently at a company which shall remain nameless, where they were going to use artificial intelligence around it. So I'm really curious as to how you went about it.
Yeah, we essentially created a separate table for our requests, right? So that talent can get notified early and often.
And when you say requests, you're saying you need 3 business analysts and 2 project managers, and a solution architect and a data person. Okay.
Right. So it doesn't happen after you win, right? Because then you're scrambling. And that's what we're trying to get away from that. And I think every company is. Different companies have different tools. But what I did was say, okay, let's do some model-driven integration, build a Canvas app, make it nice and pretty, super easy. And the model-driven integration is not the easiest thing to work with. It really isn't.
No, it's not.
But it worked. It worked. And it's helpful. We're using it, and it's a pretty helpful tool to give our employees, our talent folks, a heads up, if nothing else. It's a huge thing.
So when you were building this out, what were some of the challenges that you faced?
So the model-driven app integration has some quirks, right?
Technology with quirks? Are you sure we're on the right channel?
Yeah. It has some quirks, and it has some when you're building formulas out, it has to be the right exact thing. There is some good guidance on it. Microsoft put out some good stuff, but it's not perfect. So working around that was a challenge for sure, but it's there.
And you got it in place.
It's in place. Yep.
And there are no bugs.
Oh, there's always bugs.
Is that because of the integration side of things?
Oh no, one of the things that it's funny when you do a Canvas app, and I am more from the model-driven app side. Like I come from a Dynamics background, so going into a Canvas app development, work stream.
It's very strange, isn't it?
It's a little different, right? So some of the things like on your on-change events, right? Do we want to do those in line, or do we want to have a save event at the end, right?
Yeah.
My product owner wanted to do everything in line, right? So you make a change, it updates it back in Dataverse. I kind of wanted to go against that, and I think we're going to head towards the one-time save rather than have it do an on-change event. So that was a little frustrating, because once you have your tab order, you can't tab as fast as you want to.
That is
You're
true.
Smiling.
I may have touched a Canvas app once or twice myself.
I can't doubt that.
So
but yeah, those are some of the challenges. I think the model-driven app integration is great. I made a very pretty app. It works well. But some of the responsiveness that I would have liked, from having just a subgrid, right, with an editable grid, probably would have been faster, but it's not as pretty. And I think there's a balance between those two.
That is true. Okay, so I'm going to throw you a curveball here, and I'm going to be upfront about throwing you. I'm going to be upfront about throwing you a curveball. Obviously, I know the organization you work for, and they're very big about ALM, or application lifecycle management.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, I'm assuming you did not build this in production.
No.
How
God, no.
did you release this properly? Because I know people who are looking at model-driven apps with Canvas apps embedded in it and saying ALM through things like DevOps just doesn't work properly.
It's a challenge. So I have a dev environment, and I push things through a dev test prod process.
Okay.
Sometimes the Canvas app tends to lag quite a bit. So
Okay.
in some cases, I'll have to force that Canvas app through just pushing the import. But nothing is done in prod. That is bad. Don't do that.
So you've deployed, obviously you shouldn't be touching it. So you're saying through your pipelines, you've deployed the model app and the Canvas app, which is embedded, and it's just all working.
Does. Yeah. Yep.
You are blessed.
Yeah. And I'm not, I'll be honest. There are occasions where I have to take the Canvas app individually from dev, push it to test, and push it to prod. That does not always work. So yeah, it doesn't work perfectly. I've reached out to Microsoft multiple times on the functionality of that. We've been told that if you package a Canvas app inside of a solution, it should come across. It does not always do that.
Yes, I have experienced that.
Yeah. So the workaround that I've used is push the solution. You have, Dataverse tables, you have all these things that you need to push over, right? Including the Canvas app. But for whatever reason, the Canvas app does not update within your test environment and your production environment. Export the app, push it into test, push it into production, and then usually it works. So usually
you're saying
it
put the app in its own solution, or put the app just as an app?
No, just directly. That's been my experience.
Okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they say it should work. It doesn't.
Yeah. I've heard stories along those sort of lines. People saying, "Oh, ALM should be, they're properly working for it. All the different types of apps. Of course, Pages is coming along as well. Being able to do it through Pages and stuff. So definitely. So, how long did this project take you?
About a month.
Not that long for a project.
No,
it's good. And if you had to start again from the beginning, what would you do differently?
Well, I think with any project, it's having more access to your users, right? To doing that discovery. I think with any project, it's hard having everyone who's going to use it on the same page. And we built an MVP, and it was great, right? But having access to the people that are going to be actually using the application is the most important piece.
It's that feedback and sort of, I guess, managing expectations partially.
And I'll use a buzzword. That feedback loop is super important.
Is feedback loop still considered a buzzword?
I don't know.
You tell me.
I don't know. No, it's important though. I mean, you want to hear from the people that are actually going to have to do that day to day. That's the most important piece for me. When you develop something, you want it to be helpful, right? That's the whole point of developing an app.
That is very true. Otherwise, what would be the point in developing it, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So apart from obviously more feedback, would there be anything specific else that you would change with the way you implement it or the way that you're doing things in it?
I think training is important. We train the users we think we need to train, and sometimes we leave people out. And I was on a project a few months ago, and I got introduced to OCM planning. How do we communicate? How do we train people, right? And I to be honest, I kind of knew about it, but I didn't really understand it. Okay. Now I get it. It makes a lot of sense. We have to do that in order for apps to be successful. If we don't do it, they're going to fail. And it's not because
people don't know how to use something.
Yeah.
Then it's set up for failure, right?
Yeah. I think OCM planning is one of the most important things we do as we roll out new things for people, because they have their day jobs.
Yeah, that is true.
We have to plan for a change for someone's life. If we don't do that, then it's going to be a failure. We have to do it.
Yes, that's right. Because I mean, one of the biggest parts of any project is not just the technology, it's that change management aspect. So absolutely. For people who are watching and listening to this who are unfamiliar with OCM management, OCM planning, can you expand on it and give a flavor what it's about?
Yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity of working with one of my coworkers who she's an awesome OCM specialist, and so she comes in with a plan. Essentially it's a checklist. We need to talk about these things around a change in a daily life of a user. So we talk about user stories.
Okay.
Bob does this thing, right? This is how it's going to change, and we take that and we build a plan to make sure that Bob is prepared for that change, right? And there's a checklist associated with that. And I think it's super important, right? So it's having that checklist and working through those things with the actual people that are going to be impacted. And that's a big piece of any application deployment.
That is true. And you're doing this for every single user or every single user persona?
So ideally, it'd be for every user. That's not always the case, but every persona gets a track, right? Of this is the change for them. This is what we're going to do, and we have to work through that. Whether it's a training or a quick session, it depends on the level of change, right?
True.
So,
okay, so let me ask you this: you've been in the industry a couple of years.
you.
I'm being polite there, friendly. Can you think of a project that you had previously whereby if you would have implemented OCM during the project, it would have gone a lot better?
Yeah, I had one. I worked for a nonprofit one time, and it wasn't necessarily the internal staff. It was the external users. So we had an application that we surfaced to external people. So they had a website they could log into and interact with a Dynamics instance. And that change came very quickly. There was nothing. They didn't get an email or anything, and it was kind of like, well, they can just figure it out. We have to do something, right? So we have to do something for even external users. We can't expect everyone to look at a website and understand what to do.
Okay.
I think that the comment is often, well, it's kind of like Amazon. Well, it's not.
I use that myself occasionally. Normally when I'm talking about chatbots, and I say,
sure.
If you've ever been onto Amazon Help and you've had a chatbot.
Yeah. So it was similar to that. And I think it doesn't need to be it can be a one pager, right? Some communication of change, I think, is a very important tool that we have. We can build an awesome app. It's not going to be successful if we don't have some type of communication to the people that are doing this on a day-to-day basis.
True. Brilliant. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time and coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Viewers, we hope that you've enjoyed it and learned some interesting things out. I'm going to drop a link in the description below to OCM. So if you want to take a look at OCM, you can take a look at it. I'm also going to drop another link because if you want to come onto the Oops Factor and show your own story, it's a sign up link. Put your information in, and I'd love to have you on. But otherwise, feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor series, subscribe to the channel, take a look at the blog. But above all, have an amazing day.